Dwellings of Eldervale by Breaking Games is a 1 to 5 player hybrid game, so you get to enjoy worker placement, dice battling, tableau building, resource management and area control, all in one beautiful package. More on that later. With the winner being the one with the most victory points, scored in, frankly, an abundance of ways at the end of it all. Firstly, components. Crikey, this game is gorgeous. It may be the most pleasing production I have in my possession, and it's very hard to fault. From the nicely done mass production and mass painted monster minis, to the purpose-built game trays that add to the gameplay experience, to the lush colour scheme, the awesome little wooden resource tokens and the metal coins in the deluxe version, right through to the brilliant art. This is a masterpiece of components production and well worth the £100 that I paid for my deluxe copy. I mean, just look at it. We all know the aesthetic, tactile enjoyment of board games is one of the reasons for many of us to play on an actual tabletop and not just play on Tabletop Simulator on the PC. And Dwellings of Eldervale is the very manifestation of tactile enjoyment realised. I said it's hard to fault, but one thing you will need to consider is that it is a table hog and the game board grows as you're playing, so please do bear that in mind if you're the owner of a smaller gaming table. So with these components really being absolutely stellar, let's talk gameplay. The danger I find with hybrid style board games that bring a large number of mechanics to the table is that they mash them together rather than mesh them together. Thankfully, Luke Laurie, the designer, he's managed the latter, maintaining a cohesive strategic experience that will reward skillful play, efficiency and smart decision making. Managing resources and striking at the right time to expand your tableau with strategically advantageous cards as they appear is challenging and satisfying, but not as satisfying as actually getting to activate your tableau cards and watch your engine build if you've chosen that strategy. Really cool combos abound with the 8 different colours that we have in the game, all bringing unique and different cards in them. For example, in one game, an opponent of mine combined one card that scored you a huge 5 victory points when you discarded another card from your tableau. That's a big cost. He combined this with an upgrade card that essentially allowed him to roll a die and double or quits on it. So i.e. he would either score 10 victory points and discard one card from his tableau, or no victory points and still discard the card. A very high risk strategy that he willingly decided to go for. He could have comboed a great many other less risky cards, but ultimately it actually meant that he won that game handsomely when his rolls came in. A legitimate victory in every way, because he orchestrated his own potential to win big or lose big, and it could have gone either way. He scored averagely on everything else. It was really this cool combo that allowed him to pull off the rather bold win. In complete contrast, in another game, another player won from behind, carefully building up a mass of VPs on her tableau that combined for an almighty last push that the rest of us unwittingly allowed, all being preoccupied as we were with the player who was rampaging across the world with his ogres, scoring multiple victory points from prosecuting a very warlike strategy. Part of the joy of Dwellings is that different strategies will yield points properly. The balance across the means of amassing victory points, it seems very good after the several games of this that I have now played. All of the games, except for the high-risk combo I mentioned earlier, have actually been very close in final victory points. The warlike player in our first game He didn't buy a single tableau card in the whole game, and yet finished only a scant 5 points behind the eventual winner, with 2 others of us being sandwiched in between them. And as we all do at the end of every hard-fought game, he of course lamented the couple of decisions that he felt cost him his victory at the end of it all. Tense, tight, exciting finishes have been the order of the day in each game that I've played. Now, replayability, I think, is excellent. You never play with all the colours in the game, so different combos can be explored with different monsters to fight against. The modular board never forms in the same way twice, so the realm you battle across it changes significantly with many tactical implications. There are 16 races with just enough symmetry that new ways to play sort of open up to you when you play different races, but new players won't feel overwhelmed having no idea what your specific faction can do. And the variety of quests and prophecies in the game through the magic cards that allow you to score further points, they all contribute to huge amounts of replayability. Game length is in the sort of 2 to 3 hour range for a 4-player game. It can run a bit long if players are not actively trying to trigger endgame conditions, but the game rewards cracking on and building your dwellings. Incidentally, some of the coolest components in the game, which is an endgame trigger, building your 6 dwellings. So do bear that in mind when you settle down to play for your first time. I always like to ask, who's this game for then? So that I can more accurately recommend games in my reviews. And player count is very important to take into account, of course. I've played solo, 2, 3 and 4-player games of Dwellings, and solo was my least favourite, though it by no means might end up being yours. The solo version is a classic roll a die to determine the AI's action, and it's still a game of essentially out-VPing the bot. Many people have really enjoyed the solo experience, judging by the forums, but for me, I found it easy enough to work in sort of blocking the AI from building its own dwellings once you understand the AI placement mechanics, rendering it somewhat less of a challenge. And out-VPing bots is still a mechanic that I find just a little uninspiring, but if it's your bag, well then you may well love it. 2-player was fun, especially as playtime is quick, and you still get to enjoy devising and prosecuting your strategy and seeing how it works. 4-player was definitely my favourite player count though, as there's just more options with more colours in and therefore more cards in the mix, more spaces in the realm to develop your area control, more player interaction of course, and just more ways to maximise your points accumulation. So in terms of what I anticipate people might not like, one phrase, dice rolling. The rule of he who rolls the most dice wins kind of applies here. And so if you are consistently coordinating your units to attack and defend en masse, no easy feat, then you will heavily skew the odds in your favour. However, that still doesn't stop the occasional example of one worker fending off a dragon and a warrior or some such from another faction. And whilst many of us might appreciate the fluff and the flavour that this adds to the game, for those who prefer the Euro-ness of this title, and there is a considerable amount, dice battling could prove to be an annoying lack of determinism that you might want to double check you're okay on before you purchase. One thing that's cool is that even if you get slaughtered in combat, you gain resources for each unit dying in combat. So there's a very nice sort of offsetting catch-up sort mechanic that really dulls the pain of losing units in combat. Not to mention that there are quests that even require you to lose combats, for instance, allowing you to sort of snatch a sense of smug feeling victory from the jaws of defeat. Now, it's also not the easiest teach. There's so much to go through in this game. The rulebook is good, however, so that's certainly no drawback. but you will want to set aside a good 15-20 minutes in your first game just to teach this game. And I think one of the challenges is that whilst there are only actually 2 actions that you're able to take in the game, when it's your turn, you're either going to place a unit or you're going to take all your units off the board and activate the cards in your tableau. Despite the fact that there is only those 2 actions, when you take those actions, there is a huge amount of things that can happen as a result of your placement of your units. And that really, I think, is where there's lots of little rules that you do need to play through and follow the sheets through in your first game especially, to really get all the little processes down. So, in conclusion, Dwellings of Eldervale is a glorious hybrid strategy game combining 4X and Euro elements to create a sumptuous, slick, high skill cap game that I think will be in my collection for a long time to come. If you enjoyed this review and found it helpful, please click a like and subscribe for more content of the same variety. And until next time, keep enjoying your gaming.